This reading month was an incredible month for me. I finished a total of 19 books, and I finished every book that was actually on my TBR. Out of the 19 books, I read one sci fi novel, 12 romantasy novels, five epic fantasies, and two YA novels. I don't know if that math just mathed or not, but out of the 19, seven of those novels were romances, whether they were Omegaverse or fantasy romance. And that was a heavy goal for me in the month of March, just because I read a lot of stuff and I don't necessarily have books that share imagery that reflects my life. So it was very important for me to do that this month. We started out the month where we ended February with C.S. Picot. I read Dark Air, which I gave 4 stars to. This was a better book for me. And I thought that the romance, there was more romance given in this second book, but I want more. I think what I should be reading by C.S. Picot is probably The Captive Prince, because I think that is adult fantasy romance. I will do some research on that because the last time I read C.S. Picot without doing any research, I was not disappointed, but I didn't get what I was looking for. The next book that I read, though, was an amazing read. I've gone back and forth about whether or not this is a 5 star read. I think because I never stopped thinking about this, that I have to go ahead and say that this was a 5 star read, and that was Blood of Hercules by Jasmine Mas or Mass. This was really good. Yes, there is a lot of hype for this particular book on TikTok, but in my opinion, it is actually worth the hype. So if you haven't picked that up, I would pick that up. However, I will say this. A lot of people on TikTok are saying that this is a reverse harem. And if you've read the Broken Bond series or Guild, then maybe you're thinking, or maybe even The Bonds That Ties, I think is the name of the Beauty and the Beast retelling where it's a reverse harem. If you're thinking that it's going to be something like that, I think you'll be disappointed. So just know what you're walking into. There, yes, it is a reverse harem, but it's not a big part of the story. And I can't say much more than that without being spoilery. Oh, did I say my rating for Blood of Hercules? Blood of Hercules was a yes. I said it was 5 stars. We're giving it 5 stars. I haven't stopped thinking about it. When I get a chance to pick it up, I will pick it up and it will make it to the shelf. So yes, 5 stars for Blood of Hercules. The next thing that I picked up and read was Amid Clouds and Bones by Ella Fields, and I was absolutely shocked because last year there was a lot of back and forth about this particular author and the book that she released last year. I didn't even read this book because so many of my favorite booktubers were saying that it was a pass. So I didn't even pick this up. I just happened upon Amid Clouds and Bones and I enjoyed it so much. This was a 5 star read. And I was so saddened by it at the same time because when I finished this, I thought, oh, that the author really concluded this. And then I Googled and I saw that this was a standalone. And I was so disappointed by that because it was so good. I really wanted more from this author. And because this was so good, I'm actually thinking about picking up that other book that I didn't read. I think it's called Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields. And that is a series. And I believe book 2 of that series is coming out this year. So yeah, I might actually have to pick that up and see what it's about. Okay, so after Amid Clouds and Bones, this is when I fell into a hole. like a really deep hole with Leta Blake. By the way, I found this recommendation from an author's page on TikTok. His name is Blaine Bellamy. He has a like list where he has a bunch of authors on there that are romance writers. And yeah, I clicked on the list and I found Slow Heat by Leta Blake. It was on Kindle Unlimited, and this book was so good, but it was also so spicy. And I was looking for something that was high on the chili pepper scale, and this was it. I would give this like 4 chili peppers all day, maybe even 4.5 chili peppers. It was really good. The romance was very well written. And the whole time I was reading it, one of my favorite authors is M.A. Wardell. I absolutely love his writing. But I was looking at this and I was like, Leta Blake might be replacing M.A. Wardell in terms of this because I'm a fantasy reader and M.A. Wardell doesn't, or at least I haven't read any kind of fantasy romance from M.A. Wardell. So, because of that, Leta Blake, I'm completely blown away by this. Slow Heat was the first read from her, and of course, 5 stars. I jumped to another author though before I read another book by Leta Blake because Leta Blake was very prevalent this month. TJ Klune. I read my first TJ Klune novel, and it was, of course, House on the Cerulean Sea. And this story really touched me. It pulled on the heartstrings. It's found family. It's a romance that not the normal that we get. This was very wholesome. This was very introduce you to the in-laws, very respectable, very demure, very mindful. It was a beautiful story about a social worker in this particular world who visits an orphanage. The head caretaker of the orphanage and this social worker meet and they fall in love. And there are kids in here, and it's so beautifully done. TJ Klune also became very highly rated to me in this month, and I gave The House on the Cerulean Sea 5 stars. I went back to Miss Leta Blake because the wholesome book that was really nice. I needed more Miss Leta Blake. And I picked up her next book in the Heat of Love series. So the next book is Slow Birth, which is a little novella of the events that take place in between book 1 and book 2. I can't talk too much about that because it's an in between book. Needless to say, it is a continuation of the love story from our 2 main MMCs from the first book, and I gave this book 5 stars. Right after I finished Slow Birth, I jumped into another Leta Blake, book 2, Alpha Heat, where I was a little bit skeptical about this one because our 2 main MMCs, Alpha Heat, are 2 people that got on my last nerves in the first book. And I didn't know if I was going to even enjoy this, but I gave it a chance. I was enjoying Leta Blake's writing so much at this point that I thought, what can I lose from just trying? And yeah, Alpha Heat, another 5-star book. And I absolutely loved the couple together. I wanted to stay in Spicy Land a little bit longer, and I picked up a fantasy romance from Liv Xander. Liv Xander is a dark romantasy writer, and a lot of the dark romantasy girlies love her. And I love Melissa K. Rorick's Legacy series, and that was my first kind of encounter with dark fantasy romance. So I thought, you know what? Let's give it a chance. Liv Xander is really out there for the dark fantasy romance. Maybe I can enjoy this. So I picked up Shadow So Cruel by Liv Xander, and y'all, it was a flop. It wasn't a horrible book by any means, but it definitely wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't amazing. I almost couldn't tell you the plot. And I left that first book so confused that I picked up the second book. And the second book is Feather So Vicious, and it was pretty much the same experience. I rated both books 3 stars on Goodreads at least, and maybe I'm rounding up because I really think my rating is more 2.5 for these. Not bad. 2.5 stars, that is half of 5. It's not horrible, but it wasn't good. And I thought, like, when I picked up Shadow So Cruel, I told myself, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll pick up all 4 of these Kindle books from Liv Xander and I'll just read a bunch of Liv Xander. I'm in the mood for some dark fantasy romance. And after reading the 2 books from the Raven Court, no, I don't know if I'll pick up another Liv Xander book. It's giving no thanks. Then I picked up a new release from that same TikTok author where I found Leta Blake stuff. Mr. Blaine Bellamy released Celestial Bodies this month, and I enjoyed it. This was another like wholesome read. On his TikTok page, he posts a lot of cartoon animations of the book drawings, and I saw that, and I think that may have influenced how I read this a little bit. I don't think that I was the audience for this book. I don't think I was the audience for this book. It read very YA for me and not necessarily in a good way, which is ironic because the book I picked up right after that was a YA novel from a series that I absolutely devour and I love. But I really like the author, or at least I like their presence online. So I think because of that, I rated this book a 3 star. But will I pick up another book from this author? Probably not. Yeah, probably not. Anyway, the next thing that I read was Oathbound by Tracy Dion, and this is a YA series that I am absolutely feral about. I absolutely love Miss Tracy Dion's writing, and I feel like the story that's being told with Legendborn and Bloodmarked and Oathbound, these are the writing, the story, the journey is just so incredible. And Tracy Dion is an author that makes me feel so incredibly seen in the literature. It's just incredible to pick up these books. This is a story about King Arthur and his descendants, and I feel so completely seen. Little old me from Atlanta, Georgia. I feel so completely seen by this author, by this story. It is amazing. And it's the 3rd book. So, no, I'm not going to talk about what happens in the book. But I am very proud of our girl, Brianna. She is finding her way. She's stepping into her own. She's doing amazing things. And Oathbound was a 5 star book, as were all of the books so far in the Legendborn series. And Legendborn was on my TBR. Yeah, one of the 3 books that was actually on my TBR for the month. The next thing that I picked up was The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwen. And I DNF'd this book twice. And I think the only reason I finished it is because I put it on the TBR, but I DNF'd this book twice. And last year, I was trying to read Malice, and I DNF'd that book twice. And I have not picked that up yet, again, if I will. The Shadow of the Gods, I would say like 85% of this I did not enjoy. And by the time I was actually starting to be interested in this story, it was the end of it. And I have book two already on the shelf. And because it's on the shelf, I'm going to probably read that. I think maybe book two will be better. Maybe. It's a trilogy that's complete. So maybe book two will be better. And this is one of those books that's been so hyped online on booktube as well as booktok. And yeah, I don't know. 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 If I didn't already own book two, would I read it? No. I ended up rating that The Shadow of the Gods, I ended up rating that 3 stars. And I think that was fair. Because I didn't hate it. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, I like this. But it took too long for me to like it and the DNFs. The next book that I read was from a series that I actually do adore, the Red Rising Saga. I read book number 3, Morning Star, and this was emotional for me. A lot of stuff happened, a lot of changes with our hero, and it's all good stuff. I just, there was a lot of doom and gloom and death and despair in this book. And I have told myself I love this series so much, and there's no part of me that's not going to finish the series. Morningstar was a 5 star book for me, as was Golden Sun, as was Red Rising. Absolutely love this series, and it's a 5 star series for me so far. That third book was emotional for me, and I think I might need to take a break from Red Rising and just pump the brakes just a little bit. I don't think I'm going to continue on in the series in April, maybe May, or maybe at the end of the month. I'll be inspired and I want to pick it up. I do own the series so far as it is to this point. I own the series up to Lightbringer. So, yeah, if we get a release date for book number 7, then maybe that'll make me speed this along. I don't think that that's happening this year, especially since the special editions for the first book just got released 2 or 3 days ago. And am I going to be one of those people that gets that? Probably. After a very long sabbatical from Robert Jordan, I picked up my favorite author's books again. Yes, Robert Jordan is my favorite fantasy author. I don't really see him ever losing that title. Single handedly, the reason why I read epic fantasy. And I have been reading, which feels very slow to me. I understand that not everybody feels this way, but I have been reading this series for a year, and I put it down after The Path of Daggers, which is book 8. And this month, I finished quite a bit of the series. So I finished Winter's Heart, and it was like putting on, pun intended, your favorite winter coat after not having it throughout the summer. And then you get it, and you're so cozy and so warm, and you feel so at home in that place. And Winter's Heart is that for me. It was, as you probably suspect, a 5 star read for me. And immediately I followed that up with Crossroads of Twilight, book number 10. Before book number 10, I rated every single one of the books in the Wheel of Time 5 stars. Crossroads of Twilight, that whole book could have been an email. That was a 3 star read, and I think that was a 3 star read only because I love Robert Jordan so much. But that whole book could have been an email. No. And off the strength of me loving Robert Jordan so much, I went to the next book, Knife of Dreams. And maybe I was still a little bit peeved by book number 10. So, Knife of Dreams, book number 11. I enjoyed this. It was also extremely emotional for me because Knife of Dreams, that is the last book that Robert Jordan wrote before he passed away. And there was a big part of me that was super duper sad about that, knowing that the next books Yeah, there's still him, but it's Brandon Sanderson plus him. And I have Sanderson's books. I'm not anti Sanderson, but I am so pro Robert Jordan. I think I ended up rating it 4 stars on Goodreads, but I think I'm gonna change my rating to 5 stars. I absolutely love this author, and he would definitely be one of the people that I would 100% want to meet, just pick his brain, ask him a bunch of questions about the series and so on and so forth. So I picked up book 12 right after book 11. And I was not disappointed. I was surprised that I was not disappointed, but I was not disappointed. I could tell there's a very big difference between how battle scenes are handled from Robert Jordan versus how they're handled by Brandon Sanderson. Robert Jordan tends to make every battle feel like it is the most important thing that is happening and the stakes are so high. And yeah, Brandon Sanderson does not necessarily approach his writing like that. Book 12, The Gathering Storm, was me reading Oathbringer because there's lots of action that happens in Oathbringer. And I feel like Brandon Sanderson's writing is either going at a snail's pace or it's going super duper fast, and important things are happening but they're not really treated like they're important, so you don't know if they're important and you don't know to treat them like they're important. Anyway, I'm saying that, but I absolutely love The Gathering Storm, and I ended up rating that 5 stars. Right after The Gathering Storm, I picked up Towers of Midnight, and this is where I started to slow down a bit. Towers of Midnight was incredible. It was just so difficult for me to keep pace and keep reading because I felt like I don't want it to end. And there was a huge part of me that was like procrastinating through it because I still don't want it to end. And after Towers of Midnight, I finished the last book that was on my TBR. Just to clarify, my TBR for the month was Oathbringer, Morning Star, Shadow of the Gods by John Gwen, Towers of Midnight, and Bitter Heat by Leta Blake. After Towers of Midnight, I picked up Bitter Heat by Leta Blake and I finished it, and it was a 5 star read. And her series in total for me was 5 stars. And I saw that there are more books in the series. There's White Heat, and then there's Winter's Heat, and there's another Heat that I'm forgetting. But yeah, I'm going to read all of the Heats. All of the Leta Blakes that I see, I'm going to read them. Yeah, and Leta Blake has been quite busy, so I have a lot of reading to do of her stuff, and I'm absolutely loving it. I was hoping to finish A Memory of Light, the last book in the Wheel of Time series, and then take a break and read the prequel at some later point. But I didn't actually finish reading A Memory of Light. I am still reading that, and I think that'll probably be the first book that I finish in the month of April. And you know what? Since I'm going to finish that book in April, why not go ahead and pick up the prequel and go ahead and finish that? I will include the books that I am thinking about reading on the TBR right here. A Memory of Light, Robert Jordan, Brandon Sanderson, just said that. New Spring, Robert Jordan, Brandon Sanderson. And then I'm going to jump into something else, something totally different. I want to read the first Dungeon Crawler Carl book. This does not sound like it's my kind of thing. It sounds way out of my comfort zone, but maybe a video game inspired novel could be something really good. I want something funny. I want something outlandish and ridiculous. I want to read something crazy. Why not? I'm going to follow that up with The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters. I have not read any of his books, which is a shame, and I need to go ahead and pick up this author. It's been on the TBR for a while now, and I want to get into it if I'm very ambitious. Empire of Silence, the first book in the Sun Eater series. I do plan to pick that up. And I will read The Throne of Broken Gods. This is Amber V. Nicole. And this is book 2 in the Gods and Monsters series. The 2 Jordan Sanderson books are for sure. The Dungeon Crawler Carl and The Rage of Dragons for sure. Throne of Broken Gods for sure. But if I'm ambitious, Empire of Silence. That may also happen. We will see what actually happens. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I will see you next time. Ciao.